Hello, brothers and sisters. My people, I really thank God for our lives. Yeah, I'm bringing up once again this Showare's issue, not even Showare's issue alone, the Revolution Now saga in Nigeria. It has been a trending news indeed. Talk of the day. It has. Brought a lot of attention, So right now, I just took my time to watch the news for about 30 minutes or more than 30 minutes, Very interesting news conversation between, among three people. That's the APC person, the PDP person, and the Revolution Now person also. And I was really informed and educated on really more than the my ideology before concerning this revolution. So in on that news, I was able to deduce that Sowore is not even the leader or convener of this particular revolution now. He is even a group out of many groups, from what the young man said there. We are going to watch it. Try to just be patient to watch the clip here, watch the news. You will really, I think, being informed and deduce a lot of things that will give you an idea of the geography territory we are, So, but what I want you to do is, after watching this video or the news, just help us to tell us what you think about the government, what you think about the movement, and what you think about the request and the demand of the people in the country. Whether what the government did is the right thing, to stop the change of this particular government, because the man who spoke on behalf of APC said that in order to avoid what that happened in other countries, through this movement, that was why the government did not, waste time to arrest Shore, so that he will not gradually, overthrow this particular government. From what he said also, heard him talking about this young man, that for him to have met with the young other man you saw here now, who is working around the unity of this country, Nigeria, that speaks volume, or spoke volume, so that was what he said. So, and I know actually that would have been most, the major reason for them to have arrested Shore, that that would have been, I think, if not that, I don't think they would have done that, because of this meeting between him and this other young man. But all the same, what we're saying is this: from this news, a lot of questions were thrown on these people, whether the demand or the request made by this um, movement are not exactly what is trending in this country. Whether all the said out is not a problem we are rightly facing. But the people, despite where they come from, the people they are representing, whether APC, PDP, and so on and so forth, they were honest, of course. We are honest by saying that yes, these are problems Nigeria is right now, facing. The problem of insecurity, the problem of poverty, poor state of education, the poor health care, poor energy, that's power, a lot of stuff. The questions they were asked, they admitted that actually that we are facing these problems, but it is not, like the APC man said. He said that we have a very bad road and you don't expect one to speed on the bad road, it will take a lot of time for you to get to where you are going to. That was exactly what he used to illustrate the situation and the condition in Nigeria right now. That is something that's gonna take time, you know. So what do you guys think about this? That's what I'm talking about. They said another problem is not even the movement, but the name Revolution Now. You know, this revolution now is the problem. They would have used another name. So they even asked the other young man of the revolution now that whether they are trying to change their name. The guy said, no, we are not changing name, you know. So that's, we still need revolution. The revolution we need is ideal to make sure that things really change in the country and favor everybody, even the poor masses. That people are suffering, dying
Hunger,
hungry,
they're dying in hunger.
insecurity, nobody can sleep and close their two eyes. These are all that we are saying. So what do you think about it? Do you think this government is not trying to, you know, make sure that this insecurity is being taken care of? Are they not trying? That's my question. Just, I need the answer. Don't curse me, don't abuse me. I'm not in support of it. I'm non-partisan, but I'm just asking a question. The economy, are they not trying? The security, are they not trying? The education, the health facility and energy, are they not trying to make sure that things move well? But this movement, is it the best way of correcting all these findings or these abnormalities? You know, just tell me. Please don't fail to watch this video I'm going to tag now. Please watch.
I would like to correct you. I'm not a member of the APC team before the tribunal. For the record.
Okay. I think that's taken. But you are a member of the NDC presidential.
I'm a legal man.
Okay, that's good to know. Just wondering, so what are your thoughts on this revolution now? Their demands, from what we can see here, they listed the demands to include an economy that works for all and not a handful of individuals. Banks and foreign multinationals, they believe that those are the people that the economy is currently working for. They want an effective and democratic end to insecurity and insurgency, an end to systemic corruption, and a total system change in the interest of all. They also want the immediate implementation of the 30,000 naira minimum wage at all levels in the public service as agreed with the trade unions, and education as an enforceable right and not a privilege. Now, a lot of people will say that what it is that they seek doesn't seem to be something that should threaten the state.
Well, ordinarily, yes. What you have highlighted are basically demands for economic reform, improvement in governance, and things like that. Now, these are clearly demands within the ambit of the law. But when you bring it under the toga of a revolution, it raises eyebrows. It puts the government in a very difficult position, because whenever you confront a government under the toga of a revolution, it means that you intend to rebel against the authority of that government, and ultimately you probably intend to effect a regime change, because we cannot shy away from what a revolution has always been in the practical sense of things, right from the American Revolution, of course, to the French Revolution, and even to the Spring of Nations and the Arab Spring. These are all forms of revolutions. And centrally, the central theme to those revolts are change of regime change. And there are ways stipulated under the current constitutional order for you to effect a regime change, which basically is through the ballot. And the so-called arrowhead or spearhead of the revolution, so to speak, he tried to be president, he lost. And he did not even challenge the victory of the president. And he's now turning around, to come up with a so-called revolution. It is indeed suspect and suspicious. More so when only of recent we saw him, in the news, with the well-known secessionists and things like that. So his motives transcend what you have highlighted. That's a decoy.
Now, I'm not in his mind. I cannot see his heart. But some people will say that what seems to have happened here is that we have taken just only one definition of what a revolution could mean, which is a forcible overthrow of a government or social order in favor of a new system. But some people also talk about other meanings of a revolution. There is a dramatic and wide-reaching change in conditions, attitudes, or operation, which could be another meaning of a revolution, which seems in tandem with some of the things that they have requested. Why is it that we seem to be taking just one definition and reading all manners of motives to what could be the actual intendment behind a protest that has come out to say these are actually the things that we are seeking?
Everything has a context. If I walk into Channels television premises and I ask you about, in quotes, the news, obviously you would advert your mind to the 7 p.m. news or the 5 p.m. news of Channels television. If you confront a government under the premise that you are revolting against that government, it means that you are taking action to undermine the authority of that government and possibly to change the government. There are no two ways about it. There are other contexts, you can situate what a revolution is. You could have intellectual revolution and things like that. If you go within the university community, for example, as a group of maybe students, you say you are trying to effect an intellectual revolution. I don't think anybody will have any difficulty understanding what you're trying to do. But when you say you are trying to change the constitutional order, confronting the government, telling the government that after a certain period of time, the certain state agencies will no longer be recognizable or they will cease to exist, like the DSS spokesperson said. Basically, you are talking of a revolt against constitutional authority. They are trying to blur it in such a way, as to get popular support. But I don't think anybody should be fooled about this.
But if you look at some of the things that they have, that they are raising, some of the things that they are asking for, their demands, would you agree with them to any extent that indeed perhaps this economy is actually not skewed in the favor of the masses? Perhaps government is not doing as much as it ought to do in trying to bring about taking us, let me just, for want of a better phrase, to take us to the promised land, so to speak.
Mokbe, there are issues in this country we all agree, we all admit. We have economic problems, we have social problems. There is poverty, there is hardship. When you look at our population, which is almost 200 million, vis-a-vis the resources at our disposal, obviously we are bound to have these challenges. And I also subscribe to the notion of telling constitutional authority to double its efforts in order to address this imbalance of having a huge population with scarce resources. There's no doubt about that. Now, when you talk of the minimum wage, I also advocate that 30,000 minimum wage should be implemented across board by all states. As a matter of fact, if possible, take it to 100,000, so long as there won't be adverse economic effects, inflation and what have you. We want the poor to enjoy, to move out of poverty. And of course, this government is already doing something in that regard with the social investment program. We need an improvement on all these conditions. There's no doubt about it. And I will be willing to also express my support for all these conditions to be improved. But the problem is, when you warp it, or when you blow it with a so-called revolution, the motives become suspect. More so when I told you about the antecedents of the so-called arrowhead of the revolution. It becomes a very dangerous path to take. And we want peace in this country.
Indeed, what's the name? The arrowhead, whom we refer to, has been taken into custody by the DSS. Interestingly, I think they're asking the court to remand him for 3 months, and we know that the court will rule on this matter tomorrow. However, there are other members of the protest who have come out who did not seem like they were armed. They were forcibly dispersed by state authorities in almost every state where they try to gather. Do you think that the rights of people are not being abridged as a result of the name of the protest, when indeed, in fact, from what we have seen, it's just a handful of people who have gathered very peaceably?
Well, I still have to take you back to the context. I do not support any measure by government that will infringe on the right of peaceful assembly as enshrined in the Constitution. No doubt about it. However, there is a limit to that right of peaceful assembly. And like I told you, the main problem is this issue of revolution.
What? They haven't gone to. Some people say this is within their rights of freedom of expression. They can call it whatever it is that they choose to call it.
What's matter? What's matter? You have to be careful with the kind of words you use. Now, why don't you call it a protest to demand for good governance? Why not? They are intellectually sound enough to coin it as such. Or there are other ways to call it. Why call it revolution? And then when you now situate it within the context, of what this man has been doing, what he's trying to replicate. He's probably trying to replicate the Arab Spring. And then of course he's also trying to wage a revolution, which we all know have, occurred in history. He's trying to effect a regime change. He tried it through the ballot box. He failed. Instead of him to challenge, because let me even ask, is he saying that he is not okay with the economic and constitutional order of Nigeria, or is he not okay with President Buhari? Either way, he's in a cul-de-sac, because for him to change these two things, there are constitutional means of doing that. If you're not okay with the constitutional order, with the way the economy of this country is structured, there are ways you can reform that.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask you to hold your thoughts, and let's go to Lagos now, where we have another guest standing by. Gentlemen.
Yes, we have a couple of guests actually. I'm interested in asking guests there in Abuja with you some of the things, some words that the president before he got into power also used, but we'll get to that later. In the meantime, we have with us a member of the PDP, People's Democratic Party, Dr. Adetokunbo Pierce, with us here. Thank you very much for being with us.
Good morning.
As well as a member of the Coalition for Revolution, Larry Adeleke. Thank you for being here.
It's not really.
Let me ask you straight up from what has been said in Abuja. Is Omoyele Sowore the arrowhead of revolution now?
He's not. Obviously he's not. He's just one of in fact, his own group is just one of the affiliate members of CORE. When we say Coalition for Revolution, we're talking about several other organizations there, so many of them. So his own organization is just one out of it. I'm not a member of his organization, I'm a member of CORE. Look, what we're talking about in Nigeria, people should get the message. Things are not right in this country. A lot of persons are suffering. Are we saying that the conditions that people are living in this country is good enough? Look at the level of our roads. Look at the manner we waste our hospitals, our education, tertiary institutions. Look at the level of corruption, the impunity that we fought for in 2015. All those things are still there.
Many people will also say that these things are not new to us. I mean,
yes, and that's why we're asking for. Look, for God's sake, it's not the first time. Perhaps people are just holding on to the words to call it a bad name. Sincerely speaking, it's not the first time. But the truth about it is that we must have a rebirth. We must have a new social order. And that's why we've used the word revolution. It's not by mistake. People should forget about the English coinage they're trying to put to it. It's much more than that.
well, I also remember that in the time past, I mean, before 2015, one or two other times, the sitting president had then, before he became president, called for a revolution, although through the ballot box. That's what a number of people also say.
Let's even leave that aside. Their own party leader, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, 30th of September 2014, it's there on Punch, go check it. This is well documented. Tinubu calls for a revolution. Clearly speaking. But look, using the word revolution doesn't really mean that you found anything on him. And let's be very, very clear about this. Persons that are engaging you on issues, there are 5 demands attached to what we're asking for. It's an intellectual discourse. One would have expected people in the presidency to take these issues off. You don't go out and put up brutality against persons that want to talk to you, engage you in discussion about how the country will be better off. What kind of democracy are we talking about? Persons that are killing out there, Fulani headmen are there. You keep quiet, you keep mum. That's irresponsibility. Now brutality to those who are asking for the country to be better off. This is unfair.
Now, I'd like to take up another issue now. People have compared the way this government is handling the revolution and protests with the way the Goodluck Jonathan administration handled some protests. He mentioned, for example, the Salvation Rally. It held, I think, in November 2014, and we had now President Buhari leading thousands of protesters calling for salvation of country. So there are major issues now. There's a term revolution. Now there are the demands of the group, which, of course, really interpret what Nigerians are also demanding. So the question is, how is this government getting it wrong?
Well, the Buhari government has good reason to be concerned whenever people gather to protest, because this administration has failed the nation in every way. For the first time in the history of Nigeria, the Nigerian economy is in total shambles. Security is the worst we've ever seen in the history of this country. Corruption is unbelievable, because corruption is not just graft and theft. Corruption is also nepotism, ethnocentrism, prejudice against people who are not with you, cover-ups, situations where you cross from PDP, you go to APC, all your crimes are forgiven. The government in power has become a refuge for criminals and alleged criminals. So indeed, everything this group is talking about is very valid. Now, in a democracy, in a true democracy, you allow for freedom of expression. All Sowore and co have done is say, we don't like this government, we want this government to go. Now, if they are planning an armed revolution to topple the government, that is a revolution. Indeed, what is going on now is just revolution in words. Let me remind you, and our audience will remember, that run up to the 2015 election, in the attempt to topple Jonathan, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Rotimi Amechi claimed publicly that if they do not win the election, they will set up a parallel government. That is treason. That is more than saying revolution. They should have been arrested. But Jonathan was a true Democrat. He said, freedom of expression. There will be no political prisoner in my regime. And he kept his word. And what happened? He got toppled through the ballot box. This is what Sharia and Co should have. This is what you should have done before this election. If you had done this before this 2019 election, Buhari would not be in government. Because people will see that really you compare the people running and then you go for the best. Buhari has been alleged to, I may be wrong, he may never have said it, that if he didn't win the 2015 election, the dog and the baboon will soak in blood. There was a lot of rhetoric that was designed to topple the government, to create unrest, but true to his commitment to democracy, people say whatever they want to say. Freedom of speech, freedom of association. That is what you have in a democracy. But the reason why anything you say now becomes a problem. I heard recently that we shouldn't abuse the president. I don't know what that means. We can say anything we want against the president. He doesn't like it, he can take us to court. You go through the legal system. Now, there is a legal system in place to replace this regime. That is the court case that Atiku Abubakar has brought against Buhari. Let us go to the court and change this government through the legal system.
Are you saying then, Dr. Piers, that you have something against the approach of the people who are protesting?
Well, what I'm saying is that this approach will only give rise to the terrorism that this government will inflict on them, because it is a reactionary government that knows that it has failed the people in every way and therefore become very defensive. Anything you say now, it will be taken as an attempt to topple the government, because the government is toppling. This government does not really exist.
How do you mean?
Because the government cannot control security. The government cannot control the economy. The government cannot control corruption. The government has failed in every way. What has the government done? Look, in the north of Nigeria, leading to the 2019 election, there were rebellion in the backyard of Buhari. People were going in droves from APC to PDP in readiness for the election. The next thing we know, bandits, kidnapping in the northwest, all sorts of ways to disrupt the election. So eventually, now the election is in dispute. We are not sure that Buhari won this election.
A number of people will also come to you and say, look, this is what politicians do every time. Once there is a...
This is what politicians do. This is what public analysts do. We are doing everything we are supposed to do, but let us look at what is going on in the court of law in Nigeria.
All right, Mr. Adeleke, he's talked about the approach, that a number of people have also said that, look, they are not for any unnecessary call for violent protest and all of that. The approach is something that a number of people
I don't know what we complain about the approach. In the first instance, we've seen in this country where for every election, people come around and complain that the election has been rigged, the processes are being gagged, and all that. Whether they are substantiated or not is another thing entirely. But there's something we all must understand. Citizens have rights, whether during election, after election, to protest about the conditions in which they are subjected to by those who are leading them. And that's what we are talking about. Are you telling me that we should wait for 4 years just because I voted for Buhari in 2019, let's assume, and is not performing, and my life is being threatened, I have no job, the hospitals are not working, the roads are not working, we should all keep quiet till 2023, people should die? Is that what we're talking about? Or you're saying that the right to talk is not there?
What's your assessment of the effect so far? Because yesterday people didn't think anything happened.
No, we have to rest yesterday, look at the casualties we had, look at those that are being detained, look at measures of bringing them out. If I take account of even what happened, then we'll now sit back, brainstorm and know the next line of action. But sincerely speaking, it's a huge success. It's a huge success in the sense that look at the level of turnout all over the country.
One of the things that, if you don't mind me putting in, one of the things that anyone would want to, of course, most certainly many people sympathize with, the agitation, the exact things that you are asking for and stuff like that. But how this protest, this activity will have a long-term effect, that's one thing a number of people are concerned. So what's your plan to make sure that the effect is long-term?
It's a continuous thing. We are going to be calling out people, at least giving commands and asking people to turn out for the protest. But it has to be coordinated. It doesn't mean that we just have to go headlong every day. People have to rest, people have to go to work. You should understand the Nigerian economy itself. For us to be able to sustain it, people live on daily income. So we just have to allow them to rest, then call for action subsequently.
Now, briefly, sorry to cut in. I'd like to take you up on the support. For example, you're getting, there's this allegation that you're getting support from a foreign organization on one hand. I'd like to respond to that. And also the support you're getting from Nigerians. The president, in fact, came out to say, or to thank Nigerians, and quote, for not participating in the Phantom Revolution. I'm sure you saw that. That's on another hand. And then are you getting support from, for example, the PDP?
Let me start from the last. Which of the two parties can we really work with? 16 years of PDP, we have nothing to show for it. Let's be honest with ourselves. Under electricity, we cannot generate. It's not as if we are supporting any party. You should forget about that. The ruling class should understand that they push Nigerian citizens to the wall. They should go to the hospitals and check people who are dying daily, who don't have money for the medical tourism that the president is going for. They should go to the roads and see what is happening there. People who are not going to school. It's not just about APC. No, it's about the ruling class. They are all part of it. And this particular one, we are sustaining it. And that's why we've used the word revolution. We must all come to see the social order. It's not balanced. Just about 1% of the entire population is controlling about 99% of the income. For God's sake, it's not fair. If you look at Africa as of today, Africa as a continent, you will find out that by the time you list about 20 richest persons, you will have about 10 Nigerians there. But yet we are the poorest in the world. What's happening?
One quick one for you again, Mr. Adeleke. The youth form like 50% of the voting population in Nigeria as at the last election and the previous election, the 2015 election. Is there any plan to galvanize this number, come up with a plan, and market this plan to both Nigerians and the primary people you are talking for now, which are the youths? What's the plan to engineer them into a force that can make, that can, cause, what you would call a revolution indeed through the ballot box?
Surely we'll get there. Surely we will get there.
But you're not there yet.
Let's be frank with ourselves. It's not something that will be too far. The Nigerian government knows that we don't have guns. But what they are preventing is that you're talking about. But we will get there, whether they like it or not.
Okay, Dr. Pierce, one of the issues that a number of people have also had is that, the established political class seem to be muscling the younger generation.
Well, that dichotomy between the political class and the younger generation doesn't really exist. There are many people in the ruling class, in the very wealthy class, who are also can be classified as youth. Our problem is much more than rhetoric. Look, the educational system is broken. Without that, skills are not being developed. You cannot have employment. What I have always advocated, written about it several times, is revolution through revolutionizing the system itself. For instance, when we talk about restructuring, we're talking about the revolution of the economic system, of the governmental system, the way things work. We're talking about revising the constitution and so on. So our approach is different. Let me make it clear to you. I sympathize with everything that Shore is doing. And I understand why he has gone to the point of saying we are now talking about revolution, because this same man was very involved in opposing Jonathan in 2015. He did a lot of work to make sure that this government, that at least that the Jonathan government lost the election. This same Shore. So now what we have is against his frustration that look, we have done a lot of work here. The new government has come in place and we are not getting results. Things are worse now in every sector than they were under Jonathan. There is no perfection in any system, whether communist, socialist, or capitalist. Revolutions have come and they have been revised to fall into the system. So this is good, all well and good talking about revolution, but what's the structure? So my position is that through this, we are going to have to reform the system. I have not given up on the system as some people have done. Okay. That's just the difference between us.
Let's take this back to Abuja very quickly. Mope.
Oh yes, our guest is still here. Hamza Gudaji is still here with us. You have heard the guests in Lagos, and you've heard what they had to say. The member of the Coalition for Revolution says this is not about partisan politics. This is about the political elite and the fact that they failed in general. You've also heard Sadetu Kumbo PS there, his submissions on the state of security in the country. He says this is the worst ever that we've seen. How do you respond to that, especially in the face of, will I say, stiff opposition? Many people saying and agreeing that indeed things are quite tough as we speak.
Well, I agree that there is a need, for the coming of minds, in this country on a non-partisan basis, more especially the youth or the younger generation. Why I say this is because the challenges of the world today are slightly different from the challenges of the past. Now this means that you need the youth, to come up with appropriate solutions to these challenges. Because the older generation may not fully be in touch with some of these issues, some of these challenges. Having said this, the methods by which this course should be advanced should also be more sophisticated. It shouldn't be based on the old ways of doing things. It shouldn't be based on the methods employed in the French Revolution, for example, of the 17th century. It should also not be on the methods employed in the Arab Spring, which started in 2010. The methods should be more sophisticated. So what I'm saying is this: as youth, we should come together, come up with intellectual solutions and proposals that would influence government policy.
Intellectual solutions and proposals to
that will influence government policy. And let me tell you, it must not be.
So good. This is like the most proactive we have seen of government since any issue has come up, and that is because government is dealing with self-preservation.
No.
Now they think that for some of the other issues that have been raised in terms of security, the government has not been as active as it ought to be, especially on the matter. Look at how it has handled this, and look at how it has handled, say, the issues of kidnapping on quite a number of roads, which we continue to see on a daily basis.
Mokwe, let us not be looking for quick fixes, because there are none. This is a very rough road that we apply. and it requires time to cover the distance. Now, we cannot just come out on the streets one day and expect things to change. We would be fooling ourselves to think as such.